Pay attention to the lines of men. Shaved heads, faces pressed to the ground, hands cuffed behind their backs, herded into El Salvador's mega prison Cecot. These men are suspects, accused gang members. Their tattoos are the marks of their identities. They tell their stories, their loyalty, and their lives. For some, it's the number 18, burned into their skin, etched in ink across their bodies. It's more than just a tattoo, it's a badge of belonging, a symbol of survival and a lasting reminder of the 18 seconds of pain they endured when they were jumped in. We see a man in handcuffs, but we never saw the boy he once was. The boy who was long lost before he ever learned how to fight back. This is the story of Barrio 18. To truly understand it, we have to go back into its history, its rise, and how it got shaped. If you enjoy our content, like and subscribe to our channel or support us on conscioushistory.backme.org. And let's dive into the history of the numbers. When you feel like there's no support system, you create your own. Communities under pressure often unite for survival. In Los Angeles, a melting pot of cultures, while many faced dreams, others faced harsh realities. This struggle gave rise to some of the most infamous groups in history, like the Crips and the Bloods. In the Rampart district near 18th Street in the Pico Union area, Mexican immigrants faced relentless harassment and violence. The system didn't protect them, so they had to protect themselves. To defend their families and communities, they formed groups. One of the earliest was Clanton 14, with roots stretching back to the early 1900s. They were proud of their Mexican heritage and Chicano identity. If respect was not given, it would be earned, and they were ready to fight for it. Drugs and weapons started flooding the streets. Some say they were put there on purpose, changing everything in these neighborhoods. As the violence grew, so did the arrests. The system would lock them up, sending many to prison. Once inside, the prisoners were divided by nationality. It was in these prisons that Latinos had to stick together to survive, and they came in contact with the most powerful group, La MA, also known as the Mexican Mafia. Back on the streets, the feeling of strength that came from unity carried over, especially among the younger members from Clanton 14. They wanted more. They dreamed of creating something bigger, where anyone could belong regardless of their background. Brotherhood wasn't just about survival, it became a way to build power. At first they called themselves Clanton 18th Street, but over time they broke away from Clanton 14, evolving into something much bigger, the 18th Street Gang. The origin of the 18th Street Gang were Mexicans, a Samoan and other Latino groups welcoming all nationalities, for anyone who was about that life. To join the 18th Street Gang, also known as Barrio 18, you had to prove your loyalty. That meant an 18-second beating, a brutal initiation that showed you could be mentally tough in hard situations. And once you were in for life. It wasn't just a gang, it was your family, your brotherhood. You would be called Vato or Esse and your homies had your back. They ride and die for you, demanding respect. The lowriders cruised to the streets, white socks pulled up high, pressed khakis, shaved heads and dark sunglasses, proudly wearing cholo style. Those from the south who put in work were allowed to call themselves Sereno. But for many young boys, it wasn't just a look or title, it was a dream. Before they ever saw a future, they looked up to the men on the corners, cruising their hydraulic lowriders. It was all they ever wanted. But here's the question. How did the young boy turn into the man who will spend the rest of his life inside El Salvador Cecot prison, dedicating his entire life to the numbers? What tragic darkness did this young boy see? The answer is war. In the 1980s, El Salvador was burning. The country had become a battlefield, tearing families apart driven by the fear of communism. The United States, determined to stop the spread of communism, poured millions of dollars into El Salvador's military to completely erase the leftist guerrilla groups. Bloodshed followed and the civilians suffered most. Villages were burned to the ground, thousands disappeared and families broke apart. The country bled, leaving its people with scars that would last for generations. When the Salvadoran Civil War sent shockwaves through Central America, many fled to the United States, hoping for safety. But for most, the war didn't end when they crossed the border, it simply changed locations. The violence they left behind in El Salvador found its mirror in the streets of LA. For many, the pull towards Barrio 18 was magnetic. These brotherhoods with cholo culture became the identity they never had. As Barrio 18 grew, tensions escalated on the streets of LA, with the biggest rivalry with a group called MS-13. Rumor has it the beef started over something all too familiar: relationship drama. But after lives were lost, the beef could never be fixed. Check out our video on MS-13 if you want to know the history of Mara Salvatrucha. For now, let's continue from a point where the hatred was so big that Barrio 18 members could earn stripes for completing a 187 on their opposition. The streets of LA became a battlefield as gangs grew in size and their influence escalated. Drive-by shootings turned corners into memorials. Arrests led to jail time, and in jail more gang members were recruited. The authorities were cornered, backs pressed against the wall. They had no choice but to fire their final bullet. The involvement of the FBI and changes in US laws to deport gang members back to their countries of origin. The feds used RICO laws, once reserved for fighting the mob, to prosecute members for crimes, while simultaneously deporting thousands of gang members back to their countries of origin, mostly from El Salvador, Guatemala and Honduras. While the Civil War was far from over economically, the gang war in these countries had just begun. The deportation exported the problem. When LA gang members arrived, they brought with them the only things they had left: status and brotherhood. Therefore, young boys in poor areas were soon throwing up the E-hand sign for 18, getting 18 tatted on their body, or had jumped in before they realized what they were signing up for. The bullet wound kept growing, spreading deeper, and more cliques were formed, not just in the US but also across Central America. Not the government, but the cliques would collect the rent to make you feel safe on the streets. More money led to the buying of property, businesses, and eventually narcotic deals within the highest political circles. It were the gangs who called the shots. When a gang truce happened between Barrio 18 and MS-13 to reduce homicides, they demanded that their gang leaders were transferred to other prisons. When this happened, the homicide rate dropped by 50%, showcasing who could pull the real strings in this country. But if you see your people dying and all you can see are bullet wounds, sometimes the only move left is to pick up a weapon and neutralize the enemy. In 2022, El Salvador witnessed 80 homicides in just 3 days. President Nayib Bukele declared a state of emergency, which was followed by the mano dura, or hard hand approach, leading to the mass arrests of gang members who are placed in Cecot, where they would face life sentences, resulting in El Salvador's homicides rates dropping below the statistics of the US. In today's world, there's a debate going on. Are the prisoners in El Salvador being treated inhumanely, or should more countries follow this approach? Many prisoners who are incarcerated today were young boys entering a world surrounded by darkness. But by understanding their story, maybe the next generation of young boys will be entering a world surrounded by light, before they will ever turn 18. So, what do you think about the current situation of Cecot prison? Did you know that the 18th Street gang originated from mostly Mexicans welcoming all nationalities? And do you agree that Chicano culture like lowriders and cholo style has completely changed the way we see LA? Leave me your answers below in the comments, and if you like our content, like and subscribe to our channel or support us on conscioushistory.backme.org. We love making these videos. See you next time at Conscious History.